Smoke still hung in the air. The ground was black, burned by fire and bombs. Metal pieces and broken weapons were everywhere. Some human, some alien lay still under the gray sky. Corin, a human soldier, walked through the battlefield. His boots heavy with mud and ash. His armor was scratched, his helmet cracked, and blood stained one sleeve. He held his rifle close, ready for danger. But the battle was over. Or so he thought. Suddenly, he heard a sound, a cough, a cry. He turned quickly and pointed his rifle toward the noise. There, kneeling in the dirt, was a young alien girl. She was not much older than 20 in human years. Her skin was a soft gray with faint violet lines glowing along her arms. Her eyes, large and glowing blue, stared up at him. Blood ran from a cut above her brow. She was shaking. Her hands were raised, empty. "I surrender," she whispered. Her voice was rough, filled with pain and fear. "Kill me if you must, but do it fast." Corin kept his rifle pointed at her. She was from the enemy race, the Varelians. They were known to be fierce, strong, and full of hate for humans. Everyone said they'd never stop fighting until every human world burned. But now, Swan was kneeling. She looked so small, so tired. "Please," she said again, eyes closing. "End it. I don't want to die slow." Corin's finger moved to the trigger, then stopped. He looked at her closer. Her arm was broken. One of her legs had a deep wound. Her lips were dry and cracked. She had no weapon, no strength left. She was just a girl, a scared, hurt girl. Corin slowly lowered his rifle. The alien girl opened one eye, then both. She blinked, confused. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you waiting?" Corin said nothing at first. His jaw tightened. Memories rushed through his mind, his squad blown apart by a Varelian bomb, his best friend screaming. The war, the hate. But still, he didn't pull the trigger. "You're not a threat," he finally said. "I'm not killing someone who's already broken." The girl stared at him. She had expected fire, pain, or at least cold words. But this was something else. She lowered her head. "My name is Zelari," she whispered. Corin was surprised. An enemy, telling her name. "I'm Corin," he replied, voice low. She looked up again. You're not like the others." Corin stepped closer, slowly, carefully. "I don't kill for sport," he said. "And I don't kill prisoners." Zelari shook her head. "My people told me. Humans never leave survivors." People were wrong. Silence fell between them. Corin looked around. The sun was fading. Night was coming, and patrols would soon search the area. If they found Zelari alive, they'd shoot her on sight. "You can't stay here," he said. Zelari gave a small laugh. "I can't walk. I'm already dead." Corin kneeled beside her. He looked into her eyes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, without a word, he reached forward and lifted her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" she cried softly, wincing from pain. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," she whispered. He looked ahead, jaw clenched. "I don't know," he said. "But I can't leave you here to die." As Corin carried her through the ruins, the wind blew ash into the sky. The battlefield behind them was silent now, and somewhere deep inside Zelari's heart, something began to break. And something else began to grow. A question, a hope. What if? Not all humans are monsters. The night was cold and quiet. The stars above were covered by clouds. Corin moved fast through the burned-out forest, carrying Zelari in his arms. He was weak, but awake. Every time he hit a bump or stepped wrong, she winced from pain. But she didn't complain. Corin's eyes stayed alert. If other humans saw him carrying a wounded alien, they'd shoot first and ask questions later. He had to be careful. Finally, after walking for nearly 2 hours, he found the place he was looking for. An old human supply shelter, half buried under earth and leaves, abandoned, forgotten by the army. Corin kicked open the rusty door and stepped inside. The air smelled like dust and metal. But it was dry. Safe. He laid Zellery down on an old cot. She looked around slowly. "This is a prison?" she asked. "No," Corin said. "It's just a place no one looks." He took off his armor, setting it down with a heavy thud. Then he searched the shelter. A broken heater, some old food packs, a working first aid kit. He returned to Zellery with a bottle of water and some medical gel. She flinched as he touched her wounded leg. "Relax," he said. "I'm not hurting you. I don't understand you," she whispered. Corin didn't reply. He cleaned the wounds and wrapped them with strips of clean cloth. Then he sat down across the room facing her. "You're not my prisoner," he said after a long pause. "You're just not my enemy right now." Zellery's glowing blue eyes watched him closely. "Then what am I?" Corin didn't know how to answer. He rubbed the back of his neck, thinking, "You're someone who lost a fight and maybe deserves a second chance." Zellery looked away. No one ever said humans had mercy. Maybe they never met the right one. Silence settled between them again. She drank some of the water. Her hands were shaking. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe. I'm tired of all this killing." Hours passed. Corin sat by the door, rifle in his lap. He didn't sleep. Zellery, despite the pain, finally drifted into a deep sleep. She hadn't rested in days, but even in sleep, her face looked troubled. She whispered in her dreams. Her body twitched. She cried out softly, "No, brother, no." Corin looked over. He frowned. He remembered having dreams like that, too. By morning, Zellery woke to the smell of heat. Corin had found an old battery pack that still worked. He used it to warm up a food ration. He didn't say a word. Just placed the steaming packet near her. She looked at the food, then at him. You're feeding me?" Corin nodded. "I don't know if this will taste good to your kind, but it's better than starving." Zellery picked it up slowly. She sniffed it, then took a bite. Her eyes widened. "It's not terrible," she said quietly. Corin gave a small smile. "High praise." They both chuckled, just a little. Later, Zellery sat up, wincing in pain. She looked down at herself, then at Corin. "I was taught your people were monsters, that you burned villages, that you took no prisoners. But you're different," Corin nodded slowly. "I was told your kind were heartless, that you stabbed wounded men, that you smiled when humans begged." Zellery looked away, ashamed. "Some of us did," she said. "Some of us too," Corin said. Their eyes met again. For the first time, the silence between them wasn't heavy. That night, Zellery tried to stand. She took one step and fell. Corin rushed to catch her. "I said, don't move yet." He scolded gently. "I don't want to be weak," she said through gritted teeth. Corin held her steady. "You're not weak," he said. "You're alive. That's already strong." She stared up at him, confused again. This human spoke like no one she had ever known, as Corin helped her sit back down. Zellery finally asked the question that had been haunting her since the moment he spared her life. "Do you think we'll always be enemies?" Corin paused. Then quietly he said, "Not if we choose something else." That night, the shelter was quiet, but something new had begun to grow between them. Not friendship, not trust, not yet, but maybe a chance. A chance that one human and one alien didn't have to follow the same path as everyone else. The days passed slowly inside the shelter. Zalari's wounds began to heal. The cuts were sealed with human medicine. The bruises faded. She could finally sit up without pain. But still, she couldn't walk far, and her leg trembled when she tried. To stand, Corin kept bringing food. He shared water. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. But they were no longer strangers. Still, something unspoken hung between them. Fear, Xelar. I didn't trust him completely. And Corin didn't trust her either. He always slept with his rifle near. She always kept one eye open, just in case. Then one evening, when Corin was out searching the nearby ruins for supplies, Zalari saw something under a metal crate. It was a knife, a short, sharp combat blade, probably dropped by another soldier months ago. Her heart jumped. She reached down and grabbed it. Her fingers curled tightly around the handle. Her hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From memory, she remembered holding a blade like this when her brother died. She remembered screaming and swearing revenge on all humans. She remembered how hatred had burned in her chest for so long now. The same fire returned. Corin didn't know she had the knife. When he came back, he smiled just a little after. Seeing she had eaten all the food he'd left, "You're getting stronger," he said. Zalari nodded, but said nothing. The knife was hidden under the blanket that night. She didn't sleep. She kept thinking, I could stab him while he sleeps. Then, I could escape. I could be free. But was she really a prisoner? She remembered the way Corin had carried her through the forest, the way he had wrapped her wounds, the way he always gave her the better half of the food ration. And she remembered the look in his eyes. Not hate, not pride, just tiredness, pain. Like he had lost as much as she had. Morning came. Corin was late waking up. Zalari sat quietly, watching him sleep for the first time. His face looked younger when he rested. Less like a soldier, more like a boy. He turned in his sleep. A soft groan escaped his lips. Then he shouted, "Nosum. Run, Sam." Zalari jumped. Corin sat up, breathing hard, eyes wide. "Another nightmare?" she asked. He looked at her, confused, still half lost in the dream. Then he nodded. "My sister," he said softly. "She died in a raid. I couldn't save her." Zalari's fingers tightened around the knife hidden in the blanket. "She was all I had left," he said. Zalari slowly pulled the knife out. Corin didn't see it yet. She stood up on her weak leg. Every step hurt. But she forced herself to move. Across the shelter to him, he looked up in surprise. Then she dropped the knife at his feet. Corin stared. "What's this?" he asked. "I found it," she said. "Last night, you cut off." "I know," she interrupted. "But I..." Didn't Corin bend down and picked up the knife? He looked at her for a long time. "You were thinking about it?" he said. Zalari looked away. "Yes, I almost did it. I wanted to. But, she met his eyes. "I didn't want to become like them, the ones who killed your sister, the ones who smiled while burning my village." Silence. Then Corin smiled, really smiled for. "The first time, you're braver than most of the people I've fought beside," he said. "I still don't trust you completely," she admitted. "Good," he said. "I don't trust myself either." That night, Corin pulled something from his pack. A necklace. A small one, made of cheap metal, with a round pendant shaped like a leaf. "My sister wore this," he said. "She never took it off." Zalari stared at the necklace. Corin placed it in her hand. "I want you to have it." She blinked. "Why?" "Because I think she would have liked you." Zalari didn't know what to say. She closed her hand around the necklace and held it close to her chest. Later, when Corin stepped outside for air, Zalari sat alone inside. She stared at the knife lying on the table, now unused. Then she looked at the necklace. She had expected torture. She had expected to die instead. She was starting to heal. But healing could be more frightening than pain, because healing meant hope, and hope was dangerous. The rain came without warning. Thick drops beat against the metal roof of the shelter. The wind howled outside like a wild animal, shaking the door on its rusty hinges. But inside, it was dry, quiet, almost peaceful. Corin sat by the small heat lamp, adjusting the wires. The light flickered but stayed on. Zellery sat across from him, wrapped in an old army blanket. Her leg was healing slowly. But she could now stand without falling. She looked at the necklace around her neck, the one Corin had given her. It had belonged to his sister. She hadn't taken it off since. Corin noticed her looking at it. She was 12. He said suddenly. Zellery looked up. My sister, Samantha. Sam for short. She loved those trees that looked like fire during autumn. That's why the leaf. Zellery listened quietly. She used to follow me everywhere, Corin continued, even into the training fields. She said when she grew up, she wanted to be a soldier too. I told her no. I told her war was ugly. His eyes darkened. One day while I was away on a mission, our colony was attacked. Varelian strike teams. They didn't spare anyone. She didn't make it. Zellery looked down. She didn't speak. She knew pain like that. Corin smiled bitterly. Funny thing is, I came back with medals. They said I was a hero. But what's a medal if your family's gone? She reached out slowly, just a hand on his arm. I'm sorry, she said. Corin nodded once, slowly. What about you? He asked after a long pause. Family Zellery closed her eyes. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. My brother, she said. Khan? He was older, strong, brave. He always protected me. Even when our city burned. She took a deep breath. He was with me during the last battle. He told me to run. I didn't want to. But he pushed me away and turned to fight the humans. Alone. She opened her eyes. He never came back. Corin didn't interrupt. He let her speak. They told me his body was never found. Just ash. They called him a hero. Said his name would be remembered forever. But I don't care about statues or songs. Her voice broke. I just wanted my brother back. Tears welled in her glowing blue eyes. But she didn't wipe them away. Corin leaned forward. We were both told stories that made us hate each other. Zellery nodded. And we believed them. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Lightning lit the sky, and thunder shook the ground. But inside, two broken hearts finally understood each other. Later that night, Corin started cleaning an old data tablet. It was cracked, but still worked. He played a video. A girl's laughter filled the air. Young, bright, and full of joy. That's Sam, he said. On the screen, a small human girl ran through a field of red leaf trees, chasing a drone that looked like a butterfly. She was beautiful, Zellery whispered. Corin smiled sadly. Kane used to sing, Zellery said. Even in the middle of war, he would hum old songs to calm me down. Do you remember any of them? Zellery thought. Then, softly, she began to hum. The sound was strange, not like any human song. It was deep and gentle, like a lullaby from another world. Corin listened with closed eyes. It was the first peaceful moment they had shared. The next morning, the storm had passed. Zellery walked outside with help. The world was wet, fresh, and quiet. Corin followed her, holding her steady. For the first time, she saw the sunrise over a human forest. Golden light spread across the sky. The trees sparkled with raindrops. Birds chirped. It's beautiful, she said. Corin looked at her, not the sky. Yeah, it is. Zellery turned to him. Why are you doing all this? She asked. You already asked that before, Corin replied. No, I mean. Really? You lost your sister? I lost my brother. Our people hate each other, but you still helped me. You could have left me. You could have shot me. Corin took a breath. Because if I keep hating, I'll never heal. And maybe helping. You helps me too. Zellari nodded slowly. Then she held out her hand. Not for help, but for trust. Corin looked at her hand for a second, then took it. Their hands were different, her fingers long and smooth, his calloused and strong. But they fit together, and for the first time since the war began, they didn't feel alone. The sky was clear that morning, too quiet to still. Corin had a bad feeling. He checked the old radar device left by the original shelter crew. The screen blinked red once. Then again, drones, he muttered. He muttered .xelar. I looked up from the corner, where she had been organizing a small pile of herbs she had found earlier. Trouble? She asked, already reading the tension on his face. Corin nodded. Surveillance drone. Military issue. It's scanning the area. Zellari froze. Her hand instinctively moved to her necklace, the one Corin had given her. It had become her comfort, her reminder that not all humans were the same. What will happen if they find us? She asked quietly. Corin checked his rifle. If they see you with me, they'll shoot you. No questions. And you. They'll charge me with treason. Zellari stood slowly. Her injured leg still ached, but she could walk now barely. I should go, she said. If I leave now, they won't catch you. Corin grabbed her wrist. You're not leaving, he said firmly. But you'll, I said, you're not leaving. She looked into his eyes. There was no doubt there. Number. Fear. Just the same stubborn will that had carried her out of that battlefield days ago. By late afternoon, the drone flew closer. A black dot in the sky. It buzzed like an angry insect, circling the ruined forest. Corin and Zellari stayed inside the shelter, silent, hardly breathing. But machines don't miss much. The drone beeped again. It hovered above the shelter for several minutes. Then it flew off, blinking red. Corin cursed under his breath. They saw something. What do we do? Zellari asked. He slung his rifle over his back. We run. They packed quickly what little they had. A half-full water bottle. A few food packs, some medical supplies, Corin's rifle, Zellari's blanket, and the necklace. When they stepped outside, the sun was already dropping below the horizon. Shadows stretched long between the trees. Corin helped Zellari walk. She leaned on him, but didn't slow down. Behind them, in the far distance, a low hum began. Vehicles. The forest was thicker now, more wild. Vines hung from the trees, roots tangled underfoot. Corin guided them toward a river. If we follow the water, they can't track our scent, he said. Zellari nodded. She trusted him now. They walked for hours. Once, they heard shouting human voices calling through the woods. They're close, Corin whispered. Too close. Suddenly crack. A beam of blue light shot past them, hitting a tree and setting it on fire. Corin grabbed Zellari's hand. Run. They moved as fast as they could, but her leg was still healing. She fell once. Twice. I can't, she gasped. You can, he shouted. Just a little more. Another shot exploded beside them. Corin turned, aimed, and fired 3 quick shots into the woods. Then he pulled her toward a cave hidden behind thick bushes. Inside, it was dark and damp. They crawled in and lay flat, panting. Footsteps passed. Outside, voices. But they didn't check the cave. Eventually, silence returned. Hours passed. The cave stayed cold and still. Zellari leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Why do they hate us so much? she asked in the darkness. Corin didn't answer for a while. Then he said, "Because it's easier than understanding." She turned to look at him. Even in the dark, she could feel the weight in his voice. "I used to hate all Varelians," he continued. "After what happened to my sister, after what I saw in the war, hate was the only thing that kept me going. And now," Zellari whispered, "now I see you." Her breath caught. "You're not a monster. You're not the thing they warned us about. You're just a person, hurt, lost, like me." She reached for his hand. Their fingers touched. "I used to dream of killing every human I saw," she admitted. "But now, I can't even imagine hurting you." He held her hand tighter. Outside, the wind blew. But in that small cave, in that one fragile moment, they were safe by morning. The search parties had moved on. Corin and Zellari crawled out and stood in the soft morning light. "I know a place," Corin said. "An old friend lives in a hidden valley far from here. He won't ask questions. Will he help us?" she asked. Corin smiled faintly. "If I tell him you saved my life, he might." Zellari looked confused. "I didn't save you." "Yes, you did," he said. "You made me stop hating." They walked together along the riverbank, far from the war, far from the soldiers who only saw enemies. For now, they were not soldier and prisoner, not human and alien, just two souls trying to survive dashed together. The forest slowly thinned. The river led them to a wide-open field, tall grass swaying gently in the wind. The sunlight warmed their faces, and for a moment, it felt like peace had finally arrived. But peace never lasted long in war. Corin spotted the glint of metal in the distance. A transport ship parked near a broken tower, flying the flag of the human army. Zellari followed his eyes. "Is that where your friend is?" Corin shook his head, face turning grim. "No, that's a forward base. They set it up recently, probably because of the drone's report." She tensed. "What do we do now?" He stared at the field. "I could walk in," he said. "Say I was on patrol. Say I survived the ambush and got lost." "And what about me?" Zellari asked, her voice calm but tight. Corin looked at her. "They'd kill you." Silence. Zellari turned her face away. "Then I should go." "No," he said quickly. "That's not what I meant. You don't have to protect me anymore," she said, stepping back. "You've done enough. You saved me. You gave me food, shelter, kindness. That's more than I ever thought I'd get from a human." He stepped toward her. "I'm not letting you go." "Then what?" she whispered. "You walk in there holding my hand, they'll put a bullet in your head." Corin didn't answer. Because she was right. They moved to a fallen tree near the edge of the clearing. From there, they could see the camp. Clearly, 3 guards, 1 officer, and a Cums tent, a ship ready to leave within the hour. Zellari leaned against the tree and closed her eyes. "You still have a life there, Corin. You still have a chance to go back. Be a soldier. Be someone." "I don't want to be someone if it means watching them kill you," he said. She smiled sadly. "Then we're both already dead." Corin sat beside her. He looked at his hands, dirty, scarred, trembling. "Back at the shelter," he said quietly, "when you gave up that knife, you had a choice. You chose not to kill me." Zellar nodded slowly. "Now it's my turn," he said. She blinked. "What are you saying?" "I'm going in there with you, Corin. I'll tell them what happened. All of it. That I made a choice to save someone who didn't deserve to die. Maybe they'll listen." Zellari looked at him like he was insane. "You think they'll believe you? You think they care?" "I don't know," he said. "But I'd rather die for doing the right thing." than live with blood on my hands again. He stood. She didn't stop him this time. The walk to the base was slow, deliberate. Bold Zelri walked beside him, her head held high, even as fear gripped her chest. They stepped into the clearing. Immediately, rifles pointed at them. "Drop your weapon," a soldier shouted. Corin raised his hands. His rifle clattered to the ground. "She's with me," he shouted. "She's not a threat." Zelari stood tall beside him, arms lowered, not resisting. The commander, a broad man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "What the hell is going on here, Sergeant?" he barked. Corin looked him straight in the eye. "This Varelian surrendered during the last battle. She was wounded, starving. I spared her, and I've kept her alive. You disobeyed." "Direct orders. I followed my conscience," Corin said. "I chose to see her as more than just an enemy." The soldiers looked confused, angry, shocked. "She could have killed me a dozen times. But she didn't," Corin added. "She had the chance, but she chose mercy." The commander scoffed. "We're not in the business of mercy, Sergeant." "No," Corin said. "But maybe we should be." Silence. Then the commander pulled out his pistol. Zelari flinched, but Corin stepped in front of her. "If you shoot her, you'll have to shoot me too." The other soldiers looked at each other. They had expected a prisoner, a trophy, not a man willing to die beside her. Minutes passed like hours. Then finally, the commander lowered his pistol. "She's not your prisoner," he said. "She's your responsibility." Corin blinked. "What does that mean?" The commander sighed. "If anything goes wrong, your head rolls first." Corin nodded slowly. "Understood." Zelari looked at him, stunned. They were still alive together. Later that evening, they sat near the transport ship, waiting for clearance. Zelari leaned her head on Corin's shoulder. "I thought you'd leave me," she whispered. "I almost did," he admitted. "But then I remembered. We're more alike than we ever knew." She smiled. "You're insane," she said. "Probably," he replied. And they both laughed, even as the war still burned far away, because for once, they had made a choice no one expected to walk into fire. Not as enemies, but as something else entirely. The transport ship lifted off slowly, its engines humming through the dusk. Zelari sat by the small window, her eyes wide as she watched the forest fade below them. The trees, the river, the cave, all shrinking into the distance. Pieces of a life she had barely escaped. A place where she had expected death but found something completely unexpected. Beside her, Corin sat quietly, hands folded in his lap. His uniform was still dirty, his face tired, but his heart lighter than it had been in years. Neither spoke for a long time, until Zelari whispered, "They still look at me like I'm dangerous." Corin glanced over. Soldiers in the far corner of the transport kept their rifles close. They didn't say anything, but their eyes never left her. "They're afraid," Corin said. "Afraid of what they don't understand." She looked at him. "Aren't you?" He shook his head. "Not anymore." The ship landed at a human military outpost, a base hidden high in the mountains, far from the front lines. As they stepped off the ramp, a team of officers greeted them. One held a data pad, another wore medical gloves. There were cameras, recording everything. "Sergeant Corin," said a tall man with gray hair and a cold voice. "We've read your report. You understand the risk of bringing a Varelian into human territory." "I do," Corin said calmly. "And you still defend your actions?" Corin nodded. "I made a choice." The officer turned to Zelari. "Do you speak for your people?" Zelari stepped forward, standing tall. Her voice was firm. "No, I speak only for myself." The officer stared at her for a moment, then turned back to Corin. "We'll need more time." You're both to remain on base under watch. Corin nodded. Understood. They were given a small room, 2 beds, 1 table. Better than the shelter, but far colder at night. Zalari couldn't sleep. She sat near the window again, watching the lights of drones blinking in the sky. Corin joined her. I thought when we made it here, she said, things would feel safe. But now, it just feels like a new kind of prison. Corin nodded. Freedom doesn't happen in one day. It's built, slowly. She looked at him, and what if no one wants to build it with us? He reached into his pocket and pulled out something. Small. The necklace, her fingers touched it gently. You gave this to me once, she said softly. And I'd do it again, Corin replied. Because it means something. She smiled, weak, tired, but real. The next day, something unexpected happened. The human commander called a press meeting broadcasted across military channels. Corin and Zalari were told to attend. They stood before cameras and reporters, all buzzing with questions. The commander raised his hand and spoke. Today, we do not celebrate a victory. We do not boast of conquest. Today, we acknowledge something greater mercy. He gestured to Corin and Zalari. This soldier, he said, chose not to kill. He chose not to hate. And this alien girl, once our enemy, chose to spare him in return. Their story has forced us to look at this war and ourselves differently. Gasps echoed through the room. But she's a Varelian. Someone shouted. She's alive, the commander replied. She surrendered. She showed compassion. And if 2 enemies can find peace on a battlefield, then maybe, so can we. Zalari's heart beat fast. This was more than survival now. It was history within days. News spread across human colonies. Some cursed Corin as a traitor. Others called him a hero. On Varelian channels, whispers began. A human who showed mercy. A human who protected one of us. XELAR, I received a message from another Varelian in hiding. We saw you. We thought we were alone. Maybe we're not. She showed it to Corin, and for the first time, they believed it wasn't just about them. Anymore, weeks passed. Corin was no longer just a soldier. He was now a symbol, and Zalari, once hunted, now stood beside him on stage as a speaker for peace. They visited neutral zones, spoke to both sides. Sometimes they were welcomed. Sometimes they were shouted at. But always they stood together, and slowly the anger began to break. People listened. A few changed. A few dared to hope. One night, while walking through a quiet garden built over old ruins, Corin turned to her. Do you regret it? He asked. Regret what? Letting me live. Zalari smiled, looking up at the stars. I thought you were going to kill me that day. I almost did, I know, she said. But if you had, I never would have known what kindness feels like. She reached out and took his hand. I never would have known you. Corin smiled. And I never would have found peace. They stood there, 2 survivors of a cruel war. Not enemies, not prisoners, but something stronger. Proof that sometimes peace doesn't come from treaties or battles. Sometimes it starts with a choice.